Welcome back to On the Move with Victor Shi. This is still Victor Shi. It is Thursday, January 5th. Again, we haven't even made our 1 week of January yet, and there is so much going on. And we want to get right into the Ask Me Anything. But before we do that, I want to quickly go through some of the news of the day. And as you might imagine, top of mind for me is the whole Kevin McCarthy speakership debacle, chaos show, circus, fiasco, whatever you want to call it. It is truly a hot mess. So basically, for those who may have missed yesterday, what happened was the House reconvened at noon following a pretty chaotic day on Tuesday where Kevin McCarthy started off the day with an initial vote. He got 19 Republicans to vote against him for speaker, making him not speaker. And then by the end of the day, Tuesday, he actually ended up with more people voting against him than the day started. So he ended up the day with 20 votes or 20 people voting against him on Tuesday, which it took 3 rounds to get there, and then they adjourned on Tuesday. They came back yesterday. New day. Kevin McCarthy apparently was in negotiations all night with plenty of pizza being rolled into the House. And yesterday it took another 3 rounds. Initially, he still got 20 people to vote against him, making him no closer to becoming speaker by the end of those 3 rounds. And then the House basically adjourned. They adjourned until 8 p.m. They came back, and there was a vote to adjourn until today. And so basically, it's been 6 rounds of voting so far. There has been no progress on Kevin McCarthy becoming speaker. He still has 20 members voting against him, with 1 member present, and the other 20 people have voted for this person named Byron Donalds. And he's someone who is Black, who the Freedom Caucus has nominated to be the first Black person Speaker of the House, which we all know isn't going to happen because he only has 20 votes, and there is no way that he's going to get to 218 at this point. And there's also no way that Kevin McCarthy is going to get to 218 at this point. He's at 202, 201. It's just not looking good for him. And so I think we're in store for a long couple of days. We see Democrats in array, Republicans in disarray every single round. Hakeem Jeffries has beat Kevin McCarthy for speakership, and I think it's just a real testament to Democrats really getting in line and backing a candidate who is just so historic. And for those who watched the episode yesterday with Richie Torres, he told me that there will be no Democratic defections, that they will not be passing up an opportunity to vote for the first Black person Speaker of the House. And so we're seeing this brawl right now happen. And one of the questions that I got asked a lot yesterday is, why is Kevin McCarthy still running to become Speaker? And honestly, I've been trying to think about it a lot. And the only reason why I can think about it is because of his own vanity. I mean, this is a man who, if you remember, from the day he started serving in Congress about 2 decades ago, all he has ever wanted is to become Speaker of the House. He has tried all that he can to get to that top position. And so right now you're seeing him try to do that. And he's literally willing to do it as many times as possible so that he can get there. But it's like one of those things where, you keep trying and trying again, and you're not getting any closer. And so you have to wonder, how much lust does this man have for power? How much ambition does he have? And he's letting his own ambition and passion get in the way of his judgment. And maybe he's truly delusional. Who knows? I think there are a lot of them out there. But I think what we're seeing with Kevin McCarthy right now is just someone who is desperate to be speaker. And he can't face reality. He can't come to earth and acknowledge the fact that he will never be Speaker of the House. And so I think that's a pretty sad reality, and it's putting the American people in a pretty bad position. You have constituents who expect their members of Congress to go to work every single day and deliver for them. But it's been 3 days. There hasn't been any progress on that so far. And people, I think, are really wondering, what is Congress going to do? Will Republicans get their act together? And if it's not going to be Kevin McCarthy, I don't know who it's going to be. There are some possibilities of Steve Scalise running, but even if he runs, I mean, will there be enough votes? I just don't think there are enough votes. And so they're going to have to try to find some sort of compromise, I think, with the Democrats. And I think the most likely option maybe is a power sharing agreement where Democrats and Republicans split control of Congress. Maybe there's a Republican speaker, but at the end of the day, the committees are going to be even, and Democrats can still maintain some sort of power in this House. And so, what we're seeing right now, I think, is pretty interesting. This morning, Hakeem Jeffries, Catherine Clark, who is right below Hakeem Jeffries and the Democratic leadership, gave a presser, and they were pretty on fire. You could tell that they are committed. They want this to end. They want to get stuff done. And that's just unlike the Republican Party right now. And so I think you're seeing this two kind of different worlds, and the contrast couldn't be starker. And last night I was watching MSNBC, and Lauren Boebert, out of all people, was on Stephanie Ruhle's program, and it was, I think, a really well done interview from Stephanie Ruhle's part. She asked the hard questions. She didn't. She wasn't afraid to call out Lauren Boebert's lies, and you watch someone like Lauren Boebert who is whipping her caucus, and it's just so amazing to see how so many people can vote for that woman. But I think we all have to remember Lauren Boebert comes from a district last time around where she won her office by barely 500 votes. That is nothing in politics. And so in 2024, that's what the next time that she'll be running for office, and hopefully she can be voted out in overwhelming margins. So we'll all be watching what happens with Kevin McCarthy today. He will be coming back up at noon. That's when the new vote is going to come in, and who knows how many rounds it'll take. But I do also want to mention some of the things that Kevin McCarthy has agreed to, and why I think he will never become Speaker of the House, even if he does ultimately get nominated, which I don't think is going to happen. Some of the things that we saw last night, I think most concerning to me was this agreement by Kevin McCarthy to allow any member of Congress, so one member of Congress, can set in motion a vote of no confidence. So basically what that means is that if Lauren Boebert, if Matt Gaetz, if the craziest members of Congress, if those in the Freedom Caucus who are currently voting against him deem that Kevin McCarthy isn't going far enough, he isn't doing, he isn't being extreme enough in the Republican Party, they can set in motion a vote of no confidence. And then what that means is there might be either a new race to become Speaker, or they're going to have to nominate a new person. And so that is basically going to reduce Kevin McCarthy not to anything like he wants, not a Speaker. He might have the position of a Speaker, but he will never actually have the power of Speaker. He doesn't have the ability to sway his caucus. His caucus will have more control over him than he has over the caucus. And so unlike Speaker Pelosi, who I think was very effective in terms of being a uniting force, Kevin McCarthy has no power of unity. He won't have any power to bring his caucus together. It'll be those like Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and Paul Gosar, and just go down the list of the insurrectionists who are in Congress, who are going to control Kevin McCarthy, who are going to control what happens. They are so committed to launching investigations, to obstructing, and I think you're going to see that happen in these next few weeks. So he agreed to that. And there's also new reporting by my friend Hugo Lowell this morning, basically saying that Republicans are very intent on getting rid of the House Ethics Committee. And this isn't really a coincidence. A couple of weeks ago, the January 6th committee referred a bunch of members of Congress to the House Ethics Committee to get, to go through some sort of accountability mechanism. And so there's that. And then there's also George Santos, who has lied about basically every part of his resume on the campaign trail, who now won't face any accountability if I guess not Speaker yet, but if Kevin McCarthy gets elected as Speaker. And so you're seeing, I think, this slow chipping away at our institutions. They're changing the votes here and there. They're getting rid of committee assignments slowly, all kind of in darkness. And so I'm glad that there's reporting on this, but we shouldn't be surprise. This is this effort by the Republican Party to slowly disintegrate democracy. And that's what we saw during the Trump years. And if you talk to anyone who has studied authoritarianism, and I think next week we're going to try to get on Ruth Ben-Ghiat, who studies authoritarianism, it's this kind of slow drip, 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 where they do things in small motions, and then at the end of the day, it really builds up. And that's, I think, the beginning of authoritarianism. They don't care about institutions. They don't care about the preservation of democracy. And so I think you're going to start to see that happen in these next couple of days, and we're starting to see it happen already. And so our eyes should be paid attention to that. I think that should raise some serious alarm bells for the future of democracy. So please do not get your eyes off of that. I think we just have to pay attention to those small things. They really matter. The next thing that I'm looking at is this morning, Debbie Stabenow from Michigan announced her retirement. She is 72 years old. She announced that she will be stepping down in 2024, or I guess 2025, when her new term would be taking place, and passing the baton to the next generation. There's some speculation about who might be running in Michigan, including maybe Pete Buttigieg. I think Pete Buttigieg might have his eyes on for a higher office. But personally, I would like to see someone like Mallory McMorrow run for office, and I think she would make a great representative or senator. And hopefully, we can get her on this show. I've talked to her a couple of times before, once on iGen Politics with Joe Wine-Banks, and then once on an Instagram Live, and she is just amazing. So let me know what you think about Michigan and who you think should be running for office in 2024. I personally think that Mallory McMorrow would be a great senator, and I hope that she runs. The next thing that I'm looking at is Patty Murray. So Patty Murray is a senator from Washington, and she is the first woman pro temp of the Senate. And because there's no speaker, she is now the second in line of succession. And so that's going to be exciting. I think you have this fresh face of leadership for the Democratic Party. I think for a lot of young people, as we see, President pro temp last was Patrick Leahy, who is quite old, but also a man. And so I think for young people to see a woman in power at such a high position, second in line of succession, I think is a pretty significant moment. And so those are some of the things that are on my mind. And let's get into some questions. So there are many people who submitted their questions. The first I got is from Jason in Los Angeles, California. And he asks, you've been building an amazing political brand. What initially motivated you to get so involved? First of all, great question. If anyone has any questions, drop them in the YouTube comment section, and hopefully we can see them and answer them. But for Jason, thank you for the kind words. For me, what really initially motivated me was actually my 8th grade social studies teacher. So I was sitting in class, and I really didn't really know what I liked at the time. And so my teacher, it was a couple of weeks before the Iowa caucus in 2016. So it was Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton were the front runners on the Democratic side, and then Donald Trump on the Republican side. And my teacher basically explained the process of the Iowa caucus and also the political spectrum. And it really just fascinated me. There was something about it where I just felt it was so entertaining to see such a interesting divide and difference between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And so I initially started to get involved because of her. And she, at the end of that lecture, said that, as young people, we have the power to get involved. And her words really stuck with me for obviously the past few years to this day. And so I started initially on a congressional campaign for Congressman Brad Schneider in Illinois. And then from there, kind of just stayed involved in politics. But it was really my 8th grade teacher. So Miss Nudelman, if you're listening, I know we're Facebook friends. I mean, if you're listening, you really have had such a big difference. I know for so many people, it's those teachers who have had maybe the biggest impact on your life. And you remember the lessons they've taught you. And so it all goes back to 8th grade social studies class. The next question is from Carly in Seattle, Washington, who asks, what political priorities would you want to take precedence in 2023? That is a great question. I think there are many political priorities, and I would like to see a lot of them get passed, but we're facing a reality where Republicans are control of the House, and hopefully they work some sort of power sharing agreement where maybe more things can get passed. But I think top of mind for me right now is protecting rights. And so we saw this happen with the Dobbs decision last year with the fall of Roe. Basically, abortion rights are none anymore. And so my hope is that the House will do a lot to codify different rights. Now, I mean, how likely is that to happen in this House? Probably not very likely, because Republicans have shown that they are so not willing to protect rights, and they're so willing to just attack rights, which is why so many young people voted against them this election cycle, and why there is no red wave. And so I hope that they can take these rights and codify them. Voting rights to me would be great. I think continued improvement on just hopefully things that both parties agree on, like increasing access to mental health, gun reform legislation. I think that there's not a single student, Republican or Democrat, who doesn't have to go through mass shooter drills. The House and Senate passed a bipartisan Safer Communities Act last year, which was a first step in passing much needed gun reform legislation. But I hope that continues this time around with some harsher gun laws and really taking away guns from the people who I don't think deserve to have them. Things like AR-15s, military assault weapons. I don't think any of us can make an argument that anyone needs something like that. And so I think those are some of the biggest issues for me. Hopefully, more action on climate change. But I think just in terms of what is possible, it seems like immigration might be a part where there's a lot of common ground. Seems like maybe the opioid crisis and so far the drug crisis might be an issue where Democrats and Republicans can agree on. But we saw yesterday Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden appeared in Kentucky for this bipartisan event where they really showed what good governance looked like. They showed that Democrats and Republicans might still be able to come together. Joe Biden said that he doesn't agree with Mitch McConnell on everything, but they were able to see eye to eye on fixing bridges, roads, improving access to broadband. And so I think a lot of those things are going to hopefully be some points where Democrats and Republicans can find some sort of common ground in this new Congress. I think we have time for one more question. And I think Mika from Boulder, Colorado asks an interesting question for a lot of students right now. So mask mandates are coming back to certain schools. Do you think things will ever go back to the old normal? What would it take? That's a good question. So I'm going to assume by normal you mean pre-pandemic. So no masks. Everyone is in the classroom talking to each other. No social distancing. I think we're kind of back to the new normal. I know that mask mandates are back, particularly in places where maybe COVID is spiking. But I think for the most part, it's pretty normal. I think because we have an administration, the Biden administration, that has done a lot to roll out testing. There's a lot of vaccines now being rolled out. And so I think we have the tools needed to kind of stop the spread of COVID. I think, it's still an ongoing effort to get as many people vaccinated as possible. But at least as it comes to the school, I think you're going to see masks here and there. And I think at the end of the day, no one's going to stop you if you wear a mask. I think, wearing a mask has its benefits, no matter if it's COVID or the flu. I think it prevents the spread of any sort of kind of transmittable virus. And so if someone chooses to wear a mask, I think that's up to them. But I think you're seeing a lot of people now feel more comfortable taking off their masks, especially if they're vaccinated. I think you're seeing a lot of schools now not require masks and say, look, it's a personal choice. And so I think, I'm not sure if we're going to go back to mask mandates, honestly, nationwide. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we've kind of crossed over the pandemic, but we have all the tools necessary. So if COVID does spike again, I think, masks will be strongly urged. Vaccines, testing, I think we have all of those things in our back pocket. And so I don't think we're going to go back to lockdowns and, isolation housing. But I do think that, there are mechanisms in place to make sure that COVID doesn't spread again. And we might have to, bring that back. But it's adapting. But there might be, ebbs and flows where sometimes we have periods where we might have to mask, but other times we won't. But I think for the most part, we are kind of hopefully seeing a time where we can all breathe a sigh of relief and take off our masks and talk to each other. But at the end of the day, I don't. If you want to wear a mask, you should still do it. I'm personally wearing a mask in places like the airplane, in places like the airport, public transportation, around anyone who might be immunocompromised. For them, it's still particularly dangerous, COVID. And I know for me, I'm also scared about the effects of long COVID. I've read a lot of reports where long COVID is a serious issue, brain fog, fatigue, just a cloud of judgment. And so I think that is something that we should all be paying attention to, and hopefully just kind of never letting it slip off the back of our minds. COVID is something that I think we're all going to have to live with. But I think now we're starting to see society turn back to normal. Workplaces are coming back together. Classrooms are coming back in person, and you're seeing less masks. But definitely, if you see COVID spiking again, wear those masks. Stay healthy. I think it's our best tool, and hopefully we can stay healthy in these next few months and this new year. That's all the time that we have left today. There are great questions still that I haven't answered. So if you have time tomorrow we're going to have on David Rothkopf, who is going to talk a little bit about foreign policy, current events, the state of politics and international affairs right now, and why that matters for young people. We'll be back at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, and I will be sure to answer as many questions as I can. So keep on submitting them, and we will get to them in the coming weeks. Every Thursday is our kind of Ask Me Anything series. So definitely stay tuned for that. And tomorrow I'll be back again with David Rothkopf. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and find us right here tomorrow on youtube.com/Politicon. And happy day 3 of the Republican circuits. It's going to start in about 40 minutes, and I will be covering it on my Twitter at VictorSheet2020. So feel free to follow me along there. And until then, and until tomorrow, please be safe, please be healthy, and hope your new year is off to a great start. Thank you, everyone.